If you feel like you're stuck doing a shallow squat where your knees can't get past 90 degrees, or maybe you feel like there's restriction in your ankles or hips, or when you go to do a squat and stay upright, you feel like you might fall back when you go to do a better quality squat, then this video is for you, because we're going to break down some of our favorite mobility drills that's going to help unlock especially your ankles and your hips and help you get way deeper in your squat and feel strong in the bottom of your squat. Because in everyday life, the truth is that we need our knees to get past 90 degrees, whether that's going downstairs, whether that's picking something up off the floor, getting up off the floor, we need this strength. So it's really important when you're training your squats, you're training full depth. All right, so the first thing most people are restricted in is their ankle mobility. So specifically ankle dorsiflexion. So let's go through a drill that you can practice perhaps 2 or 3 times a week to work on your ankle mobility. Now you can do this in a half kneeling position like Marty is in here. And you can start with no weights if you like, and then progress to adding weight. So if you're doing no weights, you're going to come into this position and bring your hands on the top, and you're going to drive your knees straight forward over your toes to whatever end range feels good for you, and then press the foot into the ground and come up.
Push up.
Great, so you can do around 10 to 20 of these, having that little micro pause at the end range, and then driving the foot into the ground as you come up. When you add weight, you're just going to grab a dumbbell or a kettlebell, put it onto the top of your knee, and then you do the same thing so it is loaded. I know this looks a little bit scary, but it's just adding load to the joint, and it's just going to help your end range get that little bit further. Once you've done your 10 to 20, you can always hold your end range for about a minute if you like, until you feel like you've added enough load to that and got to your maximum depth, and then you can do the other side. If you feel like getting into this position here is even too much on your ankles and knees, you can use an elevation, whether that's a step or a bench, and do exactly the same drill, however, with the foot up onto the bench. So again, you can do it with a weight or with no weight. Bring the foot up so it's facing directly forward, driving the knee past the toe onto whatever ankle range you have, and then actively pushing that foot into the bench and pressing away. So obviously this has freed up the opposite leg. So if you felt like the other variation was uncomfortable, start with this drill here. And it is really important to spend some time working on this, because there's not a lot of blood flow around, or circulation around your ankles and feet, so it's going to take some time for these tissues to adapt. So in the meantime, while you're working on these drills, maybe you do a few rounds 2 to 3 times a week. When you go to actually do your squat, you can elevate your heels, and I'll show that variation at the end of the video. Now, the second thing you can do for your ankles is spend some time in your deep squat. So I recommend, especially if your ankles are restricted, you elevate your heels. And so coming into a squat position, you might have a narrow stance or a wide stance. Don't get too caught up in that position. We all have different femur and hip positions and shapes of our hips. So the main thing is that the heels elevated will allow you to come a bit more upright. If you felt like if you're in a deep squat and you're stuck in that rounded position, it also takes some pressure off the heels. So you want to spend about 2 minutes accumulated here. You may even find holding a weight at the front or holding onto something in front of you that's fixed will help counterbalance that weight forward so that you can stay more upright. Now, when I say 2 minutes in a deep squat, you can accumulate the 2 minutes. That might seem like 30-second sets or 10-second sets, having those breaks in between.
Adding up to the 2 minutes.
All right, so once we've started working on our ankle mobility, the second thing that most people need to work on is our hip mobility. Specifically in our squat, we do need an adequate amount of hip internal and external rotation. So for this mobility drill, you're going to set yourself up into a 90-90 position on the floor. Now, if this position is quite uncomfortable to move through, you can use your hands as support If you take your hands off, it's going to be more of a challenge and more active. So we want to maintain the same distance between the front and the back leg, and the back leg is going to lead. So we've got Marty here has his right leg in front, left leg behind. He's going to initiate the movement with his back leg going into external rotation. The front leg is going to follow. We find this bear sit in the middle, and then we come all the way through onto the other side facing the front shin, and then the back leg will initiate into external rotation and the front leg will follow. We often use this as a warm-up for our lower body strength sessions because it's a nice dynamic way to get hip internal and external rotation. So Marty is just demonstrating now using the hand support and still working active and controlled through the hips. So you might like to do 10 of these, moving from side to side. If you're doing active, you're going to have the hands in front and trying to keep the body upright. And you just want a nice even pace. So we'll just do a couple more here if you want to try it following along with Marty. Opening the back leg, coming into your middle bear sit, and then that back leg starts to follow you to come down, and then we initiate again with the back leg, the front leg follows, and we come through. So then if you want to specifically work on some hip internal and external rotation, you can stay on one side. And with this back leg, the first drill we're going to work on is hip internal rotation, which means we keep this knee driving down into the ground. We keep the body upright. You can absolutely lean into that front hand if you need to, just coming off to the side. But if you want to keep more challenge, you will keep yourself upright here. Now from here, you're going to keep that knee down and lift this foot as much as possible without leaning forward through the body or without moving the body. So ideally we'll do about 10 of these, lifting the foot, and you might even find initially you might get hardly any movement. That is fine. It's a good start. We're activating these hip internal rotators. You might even find you get a little cramp or something here. That's okay. Just move out and come back into it. So I recommend doing 10 of these on one side, keeping that body upright, working on isolating this hip in internal rotation, and then keeping the foot down, we open the knee up into external rotation. So I like to have one hand in the middle and one hand on the side, and then keeping that active and opening the hip as much as possible here. Good. So again, you'll work through 10 external rotations through this back hip, keeping the rest of the body active and braced and still while we just isolate this one movement to come from the hip joint. And again, this is something you can build up your range and your strength in over time, but it's going to translate into benefits of having a more efficient squat. It's also, Marty's going to do the other side. So starting with internal rotation, it's also going to work on one side and then the other. So you might find one side easy and then one side really difficult. And obviously in a squat, we work both the left and the right sides together. So it is good so that works efficiently. We actually work on each side, making sure we've got adequate range of motion and active range of motion available in the hip joint. So once you've done your 10 of internal rotation, you're also going to do your 10 of external rotation, which is just the opposite movement. The foot stays down, the knee opens, keeping really braced and upright in the core as possible. But obviously, this might not look like that to start with. You can build it up over time. So this is again a drill that you can use as a warm-up or as a separate mobility session in between your strength sessions. Okay, that's 10. Cool. So we've covered ankle mobility and hip mobility. I also want to go through with you some variations you can actually make to your squat to make it easier while you build up your range in those joints. So the first thing you can do, whether that's a front squat or a back squat, is actually do it with an elevated heel. So Marty's going to demonstrate a goblet squat, but he's going to elevate his heels. This is going to allow him to be a little more stacked through the rest of his spine. He can still load it so starting at the top. Yeah. But you're going to do your normal goblet squat, trying to keep upright, Coming down in an even pace down to whatever range you feel like you can still be active, and then drive through the heels. You're going to press into that slight elevation. Also, if you don't have a slant board, you can absolutely just roll up a towel or use some weights underneath your heels to elevate that. Now, the other thing we can do is change the pace of the squat. So we really like a pause squat. So what you'll do is do 4 counts down, a pause at the bottom, and then a drive up. So I'll get Marty to demonstrate this variation. 4 counts down to the bottom, 4, 3, 2. He's going to hold for 3, 2, 1, and then drive up. So you can do that one more time. By doing this, what we're actually doing is specifically training the bottom of the squat, this bottom end range, where most people find the hardest point of the squat. So pausing at the bottom, getting some control, and then exhale. You can hear Marty exhale, driving it up. The last variation you can work on, and you can still do this with a heel elevation, is starting at the bottom. Now, you don't need to use a super heavy weight for this one. So you're going to start in your deep squat, heels elevated. And then from here, we're going to come up about 1/4 of the way up. And we're going to hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then rest. Take a little pause. We do this again. Come up about 1/4 of the way. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rest. And we'll do one more round here. Come up. Hold it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then relax. You can take a 2-minute break if you do this variation, and then come back into it and do it for maybe 2 to 3 more sets. So these specific mobility drills, plus those variations that we like to really incorporate into our strength training, are going to work on your strength and mobility, so you can get a way deeper squat, more efficient squat, and get strong in a greater range of motion. If this was helpful for you, please leave us a comment, let us know, like and share this to someone else that might be helpful for, and we thank you for following along.